Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Rowan, just statewide news service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Weekly newspaper for the Orthodox Jewish community. It's national publication. I have a column called Albany Beat, and I talk about how the government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And I'm very happy about that. And one of your neighbors is here with us as a guest. Right. We have Mara Ginsberg, who's from Delmar. I am. And she runs a program, a group called To Life. She founded the group.
I did, 1998.
1998. It's To Life. It's about breast cancer awareness. Mm-hmm. And why don't you tell us the genesis of how this started?
So both my mother and my aunt each had breast cancer twice, and they both died at the age of 44, and
wow.
4 years apart. So when I say breast cancer has been part of my life, all of my life, I pretty much mean that. And then my turn came when I was a young person, and the good news is I'm no longer a young person, so I survived through that for almost, I'm coming close to 20-year survivor. So I was diagnosed at 36, and my children were 7 and 4. And they're now almost 27 and almost 24. So to me, that's a wonderful thing that I am still doing so well and had the opportunity to raise my children. And through my diagnosis and my treatment, I came to observe and realize that there were a lot of programs and services. Now, I'll say this was not pre-internet, but very early internet. There were not a lot of programs and services for women and our families and men in our community dealing with breast cancer, and we now also deal with women's health and wellness issues as well, including ovarian cancer and the related. So I founded To Life in 1998 to fill a gap and be a very personal place where people could access whatever services they need.
And since then, you know what's interesting is that there's a high incidence of men having breast cancer.
You know, I don't know that the percentage has increased, but I think maybe a lot of us are becoming more aware of it happening more and more.
You know, I'd like to just even go back to women,
but I wanted to talk about, you know, the men, how they have their chest cut open, and, you know, for the cancer to be taken out of their
well, I mean,
because there's nothing really to cut off, like, you know, so.
Well, I mean, in any instance, when it's appropriate to remove a tumor, you know, wherever it is, that's...
Right.
You know, I mean, I've been around for a long time like yourself, and breast cancer, and really kudos to you that making it aware and therefore the early detection. But it's always a big question, is it more awareness now, or is the disease multiplying now? Is there more women than, let's say, 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Or it's just because there's an awareness now, you know, it's at the forefront?
I think it's a really good question. I don't have the statistics top of head, but I think some of the indications are that we're diagnosing it at an earlier stage, and many of the cancers that are diagnosed are at such an early stage, they call it stage 0. So because of the increased prevalence and increased use of mammography, we're finding things at the earliest possible stage. So we may be finding more. Those things might have been there before, though. We just didn't see them because mammography was less prevalent and certainly less sensitive. But the good news is when found early, there are many cancers that can be addressed, and the survival rate is significantly better. But there's still large numbers, close to 40,000 women dying
the
of
medical
breast cancer
technology
annually.
has, I mean, I would assume it advanced. I'm a rabbi, not a doctor. But, you know, from what I hear, that the medical technology has greatened the survival rate for women.
So there are tools now that didn't exist even when I was diagnosed in the 90s. Tools that are readily available now, such as a breast MRI, is something that didn't exist previously. So now, I understand you had a program recently about women with dense breast tissue. So it used to be the choice was a mammogram and maybe an ultrasound. And now you have the added technology to use for when it's appropriate, which is a breast MRI that has a different sensitivity. And actually the mammograms are different as well. The tools are better, you know, the next generation, if you will. So the digital mammography the picture can be flipped in different directions to the observation of the radiologist. But what's interesting is something that has improved the diagnosis is also a knowledge that the radiologist who sees and examines breast mammography is going to be better able to diagnose it because they see it over and over again as compared to a radiologist who normally looks at, you know, the legs, the arms, other parts of the body. So medical science, technology, as well as understanding and training have improved the diagnosis and therefore then the outcomes.
But you say the 40,000, and that's obviously, even one is too many, 40,000 women die. Would you say that if, with your help, I mean, I'm sure you're making women more aware of it, of, you know, their bodies and what's happening. If the women theoretically would be totally aware, would it wipe out breast cancer? I mean, not why it would be cured.
No.
And then not cured,
no.
You know what I'm saying?
Early diagnosis is obviously very helpful, but of course there are virulent strains and different kinds that
can't do anything
are very
about it.
aggressive. Well, not so much they can't do anything, but metastatic disease is a different challenge. So once it's gone to the liver, the lungs, the bones, the brain, but the treatments have improved substantially, and there are drugs. There's a drug called Herceptin. So that came out roughly in 1998, and you had to basically, literally, win the lottery to get access to that product at the time. And now it's standard protocol for certain patients who have certain indications. And it's a godsend, and it's a game changer in the way that it targets the receptors on the tumor cells. So there are things that have happened, and even more recently than that, that are very exciting, and there's things in the pipeline. So I'm ever hopeful that we can
eradicate the whole thing.
Sure, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, can that, I mean, again, actually, it's like there's an old Jewish, my sister's an oncologist in Pittsburgh. She said, oh, sure, so now I'm an expert over here. So I'm not an expert. Obviously, I'm a rabbi, not a doctor. But do they use that medicine for other? I mean, I just know, just generally because obviously I counsel people that are unfortunately sick and dying, and they just a little bit. I know that one cancer is, one cancer is different than another. Like breast cancer, all right, there's stomach cancer. It's here, it's there, but it's really two different ways to approach it.
Many different ways. Even breast cancer itself, breast cancer is not one disease, it's many, many different diseases, and each individual has a unique set of circumstances, how fast their tumor is growing, whether it's receptive to hormones or not, and this HER2, which is potentially impacted in a good way by the drug Herceptin. So there's a variety of pathologies that any individual might have that would impact what's the best treatment for them. And there are definitely scientists studying if a product is working, a pharmaceutical or whatever is working in one cancer treatment, does it translate to other tumor types, so solid tumor types. And again, I'm not a scientist, I'm a lawyer, so I read a lot, but one thing doesn't necessarily translate directly to another, but certainly anything that has a good result in one cancer, people will take notice and evaluate. Sure. But a great resource, just so you know, in terms of clinical trials, certainly locally there are oncology practices that work with Sloan Kettering or Dana-Farber, and that's important. And New York Hematology Oncology, for example, is a large practice that works with different clinical trials, even right here. But there's also the National Cancer Institute, and a patient for any kind of cancer can go right online and look to see what kinds of clinical trials are potentially an option for them.
Very good. There's so many, again, medical advances
Right.
that, you know, like hope and research.
I got to tell you, my mom had breast cancer.
I know she came to some programs.
Right.
You brought her. Yeah.
And she had the mastectomy, but then the cancer came back in the same place.
That's called a local recurrence generally.
So, and then she went back for treatment, but she was on tamoxifen.
Very right.
So that's another. Is that another?
That's a hormone type therapy
Yeah.
that's actually been tried and true, so
Yeah.
to speak, for many, many years.
So
Very effective. And there are other products that are similar class, if you will. So if tamoxifan's not right for one patient, there may be something else that they can take.
So now she's clean.
That's
So
wonderful.
That's great.
Right,
Yep.
right. That's great.
And, but you know, what was your reaction when you heard about Angelina Jolie when she was diagnosed? When they said she was a ticking time bomb?
So, so you
Can
bring
you
up.
give the background before, because
Yeah, I was
you know
hoping-
more than
I was
news.
hoping-
I
Tell
can
the
explain a
story.
little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Please.
so there are people, and I'm one of them, that are predisposed to breast cancer and ovarian cancer.
Why? Because of
a
family?
genetic predisposition,
All
a
right.
specific genetic predisposition. And in the case of Angelina Jolie, I believe that she had one of the mutations. Personally, I have the BRCA, which is BR for breast, CA for cancer, so they call it BRCA1, which puts someone with that predisposition at a higher risk for breast cancer. In my case, I had it, obviously, actually before the test was even something that was available. And people with BRCA1 have a higher incidence of ovarian cancer as well. So it's my recollection that Angelina Jolie had a diagnosis and also had an understanding that she was either BRCA1 or BRCA2, and made a determination for herself that she would feel more comfortable and not worry as much about her future if she had a bilateral mastectomy.
Which is a double mastectomy?
That is a double mastectomy, and it's my recollection that she had what's called reconstruction done at the same time.
So now
These are very personal decisions, and it was the right one for her. And there are other women who choose to watch and have more monitoring. So if you find out that you have the gene, there are women who will have a bilateral mastectomy and an oophorectomy, meaning removing of the ovaries. But if you're, say, 27, you might not find that that is an appropriate, if you're pre-childbearing, for example, you might feel that that's not what you want to do.
This is all preventive, meaning because you don't know for sure if you have it.
Well, you can test to know whether you have the genetic mutation. It's not a
Doesn't mean
foregone
yeah.
conclusion you're going to get cancer of any kind. You just have a higher risk factor for sure.
So you don't think it was an overreaction by any means?
No, I think she made the decision, and these, again, they're very personal, and it was the right decision for her. And I applaud her for being public about it so that women can think about what's right for them.
Now, like I said, my mother, in her case, it came back even after she had the mastectomy. Could that happen with someone like Angelina Jolie?
You know, obviously, I'm
I'm-
not a doctor and I don't know anything
yeah,
about
right.
her medical pathology,
Right,
but
right.
when they do a mastectomy, they don't necessarily remove every cell of breast tissue. So, yes, in theory, you know, there might be an opportunity, but the risk is greatly diminished.
Yeah, sure.
That's the point of doing the surgery.
Okay. And what programs do you run at To Life to help with people who need, you know, counseling or sympathy or help?
Well, so we have a variety of programs and services, all of which are free of charge. So we run support groups for women that are newly diagnosed. We run groups for women with metastatic disease. We run them both in Del Mar, up in Saratoga, and around.
Well, you have one in Saratoga called Beat the Odds.
Well, that's
At the
that's an
track.
education program. We actually have an office in Saratoga as well, and we're we work with all the various healthcare providers pretty much in the community. So we have support groups, we have a mentoring program where we pair women one-on-one with, or men, with another survivor, so that with whom they might have things in common, whether age and also type of diagnosis, so that they can talk on the phone or meet for coffee or whatever works for them. We also have larger scale education forums. Beat the Odds is coming up on August 5th at the Gideon Putnam. It is, again, free of charge, as all of our programs are.
Right.
We also run health and wellness programs, so people can experience yoga or Tai Chi or other wellness types of activities, and decide if they think it's going to help them. Then they can move forward with it on their own schedule with their own practitioners. And
Do you get mostly men or women going to these?
well, primarily it's women, but they often bring significant others, even to support groups. We're happy to accommodate. We've run groups for spouses of, not recently, but in the past, when there's a need for it, spouses of women with breast cancer, because they're, you know, at home thinking, how do I deal with this too? From a different perspective, but it's equally
What
important.
stage would someone maybe come to you if there's, like Mark saying, like the average person, their doctor just says, you have cancer, oh, I better look up on the computer,
Well,
and I better
so-
get to this organization to help me out?
We get a lot of referrals from physicians. We don't provide any medical services. Our services are psychosocial, you know, they're adjunct to the medical community. People come to us at all stages. It's interesting because we have a variety of programs and services. You can touch us when you feel you need to and you want to. So it could be right away because you need a wig or you want to come to a support group. And sometimes it's when you're all done with treatment, because women, they're being so busy, or people are so busy with the physicians and the whole, you know, kit and caboodle of what comes along with surgery and chemo as needed, that afterwards they kind of sit up and say, whoa, now what? And you know, it's an interesting stage in one's life, post-cancer treatment. It's a very nice stage. I have seen people say, well, life is short. They buy a new house, they ditch the spouse, or it's a variety of reactions. It's funny. Or they buy jewelry, or their kids get a new bicycle, or they just really enjoy life in a different way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to, you mentioned earlier about Dana-Farber, which is in Boston?
In Boston.
Or Sloan Kettering
In New York City, and many other facilities around.
Exactly. But we hear on the TV commercials about Roswell Park.
Roswell Park, also a good institution.
And they say, don't jump to a conclusion of what you should do. If you have cancer, come talk to us. There might be other solutions.
So we have...
And you were saying earlier that women want to get this out of the system quick. So
well, everybody's different.
Yeah,
and,
that's true too.
And every medical situation, you know, has a different sense of urgency, some more so than others. There's frequently time to evaluate your options, and people are entitled, authorized to get a second opinion from a major cancer center, and they are designated cancer centers, you know, by the federal government. And so some of the ones mentioned are those. But the good news is that for people that don't want to travel, and some people have no problem with it and others just are reticent to do that, some of the local oncology practices are able to coordinate with some of the major institutions to help evaluate. So that's also very, very positive. But you know, there are many good hospitals around the country, and it's
at Cleveland Clinic or Cleveland?
well, you know, I'm not personally, I have heard of it, I'm not familiar. In terms of the cancer centers, you know, I hear a lot more about MD Anderson in Texas, which is very well respected, as well as, of course, the good news is, you know, there's so many for us right near here. And again, there's some good care in our capital region. because maybe of electronics and the internet and whatever, people can coordinate.
Do you have programs for men with breast cancer?
Well, we certainly encourage men with breast cancer to contact us and to attend. So certainly a lot of our education forums, completely gender neutral, and we will make an effort to mentor, pair up a mentor for a man that wants it, and run a group for men if we have a group or at least a couple that want to sit and participate in that kind of environment.
You're saying, it's interesting, so I just give you kudos. I mean, you're just such a great service to the community. But like, almost what you're saying at the beginning, like online, I mean, there's such thing maybe to go national. Would you ever think of expanding? You say you're here in the capital district.
We're actually serving 10 counties, and we are a grassroots organization, and part of the benefit of not being a national organization is we have a lovely and unique community here, as I think we all know, and our needs are specific. And we like to, because we're local, and because we don't answer to any higher authority,
no, there you go.
We are able to morph our programs and services to what we need right here. And in some counties it's one thing, and in others it could be something different. So we're not focused on becoming a national organization. There are those out there. The internet is a blessing and a curse maybe, because there's so much information. And while the internet was really in its infancy in the 90s when I started To Life, so our services were needed because there was no way to access information, not really. Now there's almost so much information you don't know how to digest it all. So we provide a different service now, which is helping people understand what might help them.
How did you come up with the design for your logo?
That's a fun story, and my daughter, who at the time was about 7, maybe 8, no, because it was a little after I was treated, gets credit for this. The name, was an epiphany one day, because forward thinking, it's about the future, etc. I'm driving in the car and thinking, trying to figure the logo, and the 2 little people are in the back, at least one, if not both, in a car seat of some sort. Little pipsqueaks in the back, and I'm saying out loud, I'm trying to figure this out, There's this little voice in the back. She says, Mom, it's a T and an L. Put them together, it looks like a chai. And I said, I knew she was smart. She's getting a PhD at Yale now. I think she is.
She must say.
Now, for our non-Jewish viewers, explain why that putting a T and an L together.
Well, I'm going to defer to the higher authority to explain the meaning of the word chai. But you can explain how the letters, how those 2 letters come together.
Here. You need a chalkboard here.
I know.
But chai means life.
Right.
But a ches, if I can just at least use my finger, it's like an upside down U. And the yud is the smallest letter. It's like a dot. But in Hebrew, they had like a Dick Tracy codes. A is 1, B is 2, and that's only for kid stuff. But in Hebrew, it's very, very serious. That the ches is 8, the yud is 10. So that's why you always, these Jewish organizations give chai 18. What's 18? Give $10, give $100 with the 18. So 18 is the numerical value for chai, which is life. Truth of the matter, first time I saw your name, To Life, I thought, what, it's so Jewish, it says To Life L'chaim, it's still around the roof. Of course, this is some real Jewish organizations here in town. But, well, you should be for life, quasi, right. Jewish people celebrate life. That's the main idea. That's what Judaism's about.
Is there one ethnicity or one religion, or however you want to characterize it, that might be more predisposed to breast cancer than another?
Well, there are different populations that have higher risk factors. You go on the New York State Department of Health website and read about some of that, or the federal websites. What we were talking about before, though, there are different pockets of the world that have a higher percentage of the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 genetic mutations, and some of those are Ashkenazic Jewish people. I believe similar pockets, though, in I could have this wrong, in Sweden. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
It's interesting. You say the Jewish women have more of a...
Well, the Ashkenazim are...
The European, for the people who don't know, the
yes,
European women.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for clarifying that. So yes, do have a higher prevalence.
It's interesting. I never knew
Yeah,
that.
actually, when I had the BRCA test done, the author of a study, her name is Mary Claire King, and she's actually the researcher who was involved in the early stages in discovering this BRCA mutation. And the study she was doing was specific to young, me, Ashkenazic women, me, who had already been diagnosed, to find out what percentage, in fact, were at higher risk for this mutation. And no shock to me, given my history, that I would end up being one of them.
It's interesting. I didn't even know that. That's news to me, that the Jewish women are...
Yes, but it's not
At a
at
high
all,
predominance.
not to scare anyone, not at all a foregone conclusion. It's just one factor to
just
consider.
that's a bit segue into one of the questions. People, and they always say cancer, oh, please, please. It is the right to be terrified of it. But is there any way, even before knowing that, to maybe eating well and exercise,
Well,
just saying,
it's never
what can
bad.
I do?
It's never bad to eat well, and it's never bad to exercise. There are some, there's some studies about reducing alcohol intake, reducing, various things. You can read a lot. And living a healthy lifestyle is always good advice. Obviously, some of us achieve that more than others. Some days are better than others, as we all know. But it's also not a guarantee, of course. But it's better.
Is there something that you wanted to, some message or something you wanted to mention that we didn't know enough to ask?
Well, our website is easy enough to access, www.2life.org. Did I get that right? .2life.org.
That's right.
And certainly call the office, contact us if you have any questions. Programs and services are listed there, but certainly register, again, free of charge.
But is there a message or something that you wanted to?
Well, we're there for to help anybody who needs it, and you don't have to go through this alone. It's a journey, and we're happy to. We're sad to make anybody a member of the club, but we're happy to be there to be supportive.
You say nonprofit. How do you get funded then?
From the kindness of strangers.
Really?
Donations? From donations, absolutely. We have some grants, and as well as private donations. That's how we exist.
I thought it was on your personal wealth. That you I was, so you mentioned you're an attorney. So just to give a shout out that you are with Hinman Stroud.
I am.
Firm.
I am.
And you also are you a registered lobbyist? Or
I am.
You're a registered lobbyist?
Yes, I have some legal clients and as well as legislative clients.
Do you work on health issues, healthcare issues?
I do some, yes, depending on the client's needs, absolutely.
So sometimes they
I also serve on the board of the JNF and the Jewish Federation.
Oh, you are on the board of the Federation?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so.
What would be your focus being on the board of the Federation?
Whatever they need.
Whatever they need. But as a board member, do you speak up and try to get them to have a certain direction? Like if you said, oh, we have to do more in terms of breast cancer awareness.
No, their mission is very different from 2Life. I'm just
I was
active in our
using that
community.
as an example. I just, Okay.
All right, very good. Listen, Meredith,
very nice to meet you.
I'm just very glad that you're here, not for ourselves because we like you, but and we're neighbors in Delmar, but just for our viewers. Just education probably is the number one way to prevent. Just know what they have, and God forbid, we always say with a blessing, no one should know from it. That's the main thing, that everybody should be with health, and that's also to life and with health. And thank you very much, and continue your good work, and also with your good health.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.